these are all countries you're naming that have very strong characters. These are very, very pronounced personalities to all these countries. And I would never make a film if I didn't have an idea that was good for that country. So I know Italy. I've been to Italy many, many times. And if I had to make a film in Italy, I could. I could make one in Spain, which I have, and France. But if you said to me, make a film, in the Ukraine or something, I've never been there, I don't know it, and I wouldn't know where to begin to write a story or make a film.
Woody Allen has spent nearly 7 decades making movies, shaping comedy, and stirring controversy. At 89, the legendary filmmaker is as polarizing as ever. Unlike many directors, Allen has always kept a distance from his actors, often admitting he avoids auditions and prefers not to socialize with performers. He has said bluntly, "I'm not a great social person. I don't like to meet people." That detachment has helped him maintain control of his creative process. But it has also created a reputation for being cold, dismissive, and sometimes openly critical.
But the implication is that it's the best movie, and I don't think that's possible.
So, did Woody Allen ever actually name the actors he hated the most? The answer is no. There is no interview, list, or memoir where he lays out a top 6 enemies list. But there are plenty of moments where cracks in the facade show. Actors who regretted working with him, stars who publicly disowned his films, and Allen himself snapping back at critics in unusually sharp language.
Since you're shaving or walking down the street or something, and something just occurs to you seemingly at random. I don't know why it occurs, and I can never, really trace it very accurately, but it's all very instinctive. I mean, there's very little analysis of the process, or very little thought about it. It's just that some things, it's all feeling and non-cerebral. Some stuff just feels funny and feels right, and some stuff doesn't. And my experience has always been that if I am faithful to how I feel about something, I'm right enough times for it to be successful.
These moments reveal not hatred, but irritation, bitterness, or philosophical clashes that became part of his complicated legacy. Today, we're counting down 6 of the clearest cases where Woody Allen's relationships with actors soured, and asking if those riffs say more about him or about Hollywood itself.
To rely not on your life observations, but on constantly gleaning things from other books that you've read. So you have to be very careful with your reading. It's you have to, really be severe with yourself about how much faith you put in it, and not let it be a substitute for real life experience.
Number 6, Colin Firth, regret and public break from Allen. When Colin Firth worked with Woody Allen on Magic in the Moonlight in 2014, there were no signs of public strain between the actor and the director. Firth, then fresh off his Oscar win for The King's Speech, was one of Britain's most respected performers, admired for his poise, intelligence, and dignified screen presence. Allen, despite decades of lingering controversy surrounding Dylan Farrow's accusations of sexual abuse, was still attracting A-list stars who valued the prestige of being in his films. For Firth, appearing in a Woody Allen project seemed like a natural step in a career defined by collaborations with top-tier filmmakers. But just a few years later, that relationship soured dramatically. In 2018, Dylan Farrow appeared in a widely publicized television interview where she once again detailed her allegations against Allen.
Lying, and he's been lying for so long.
The accusations of one survivors, how are they going to stand for all of us?
The interview reignited Hollywood debates about complicity, accountability, and whether stars should continue to work with Allen. For Colin Firth, the decision was clear. He would not. In a statement reported by People, Firth said unequivocally, "I wouldn't work with him again."
Yeah, this is why all the trouble happened. My father decided to take a job in Nigeria, teaching, and then he thought it'd be interesting to go to America. And so we swapped with the family. We took over their house and wherever their schools were and all that sort of thing just for a year.
This was a stark reversal from the quiet professionalism he had once shown. While Firth did not go into great detail about his reasoning, his decision was clearly meant to signal solidarity with Dylan Farrow and distance himself from a filmmaker whose reputation had grown increasingly toxic. Coming from an actor as respected and deliberate as Firth, the words carried weight. It wasn't an impulsive young star trying to manage optics. It was a seasoned veteran taking a firm moral stance.
Yeah, because I don't have that much material, really. No, I told a dreadful story about how I got trapped in my house. My finger got jammed in a window, and I had to call for help, and I was just wearing underwear at the time, and it was really sort of non-presentation underwear, and I was reduced to the indignity of calling for help.
The impact of Firth's decision rippled through the industry. Unlike some younger actors who donated their salaries from Allen Films or issued long public statements about regret, Firth's approach was concise and absolute. The gravity of his declaration, refusing any future collaboration, struck many as more powerful than any elaborate apology. It showed that even someone with an established career, largely immune to career blowback, wanted no further association with Allen. Still, questions linger. Was Firth's decision rooted purely in morality, or was it also influenced by the pressures of Hollywood during the height of the hashtag #MeToo movement? Critics argued that some actors turned on Allen only once it became safe to do so, when public opinion had shifted decisively against him. Supporters of Firth, however, point out that he had little to gain and nothing to prove. His career was secure, and speaking out was an act of integrity rather than convenience. Whatever the motivations, the outcome was the same. Colin Firth drew a line, and in doing so, joined a wave of respected actors who chose to walk away from Woody Allen's shadow. Do you think Colin Firth's rejection of Woody Allen was a brave moral stand? Or simply a safe move in a Hollywood already turning its back on the director? Number 5. Timothée Chalamet, donating his salary. When Timothée Chalamet signed on to star in Woody Allen's A Rainy Day in New York, it must have felt like another milestone in a meteoric rise. Chalamet had already stunned critics with his Oscar-nominated performance in Call Me By Your Name and was hailed as one of Hollywood's most promising young actors. At the time of filming in 2017, working with Woody Allen still carried a veneer of prestige. A chance to be part of the oeuvre of a director whose name had been synonymous with art house cinema for decades. But the cultural winds shifted quickly. By early 2018, the MeToo movement was at its height, and Dylan Farrow's allegations against Allen were once again dominating headlines. Public pressure mounted on the cast of A Rainy Day in New York, which also included Selena Gomez, Elle Fanning, and Jude Law. Critics and activists began asking pointed questions. Why were actors still choosing to work with Allen given the seriousness of the accusations? Chalamet, at just 22, was thrust into the center of a controversy he had not anticipated.
I think there's like a universal relatability that the film hopefully gets at, and I think, like you said, you're a parent, and I think it's the experience of a lot of parents seeing this movie, but also likewise of people that are the age of Nick in the addiction, that this is a recognizable force in...
Unlike veteran stars who had worked with Allen in quieter times, he was a rising figure with a carefully cultivated reputation as thoughtful, socially conscious, and progressive. His response had to match the expectations of a younger fan base deeply attuned to issues of justice and accountability.
I don't know, maybe it's like too simple or something to point to the drama school I went to, but that's just like how my whole class was taught, is just to I think if you value like the idea of being...
In January 2018, Chalamet made his decision public. On Instagram, he announced that he would be donating his entire salary from A Rainy Day in New York to 3 organizations. Time's Up, the LGBT Center in New York, and RAINN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. In his statement, he explained that contractual obligations prevented him from speaking freely about his choice to take the role, but he wanted to ensure he was not profiting from it. The post was widely shared and praised, with many viewing it as a symbolic act of integrity. The gesture, however, was not without complications. Some skeptics argued that Chalamet's decision was a calculated move to protect his brand rather than a purely moral stand. After all, the donation coincided with the peak of public outrage against Allen, and Chalamet's young career depended heavily on maintaining credibility with progressive audiences. Others pointed out that by donating his salary, he was essentially admitting he regretted the collaboration, an acknowledgement that he should never have accepted the role in the first place. The episode highlighted the delicate balance between artistry, ethics, and image management in modern Hollywood.
In a movie called Men, Women, and Children that I was basically cut from about 10 years ago, and I still went to the premiere for some reason. And
Good for you.
yeah, out of pride, and I was kind of like sulking in the party, you know, and he was very warm and gave me a nice.
Chalamet's choice may have cost him nothing financially, compared to his future blockbuster paychecks, but it reinforced his reputation as an actor who takes stands on principle. At the same time, it intensified the narrative that Woody Allen had become radioactive in the eyes of a new generation of talent. Do you think Timothée Chalamet's decision to donate his salary was a genuine act of conscience? Or was it more about protecting his career in the long run? Number 4. Greta Gerwig, A Change of Heart. When Greta Gerwig appeared in Woody Allen's 2012 romantic comedy To Rome with Love, her career was just beginning to gain traction. She had built a reputation as an indie darling through collaborations with filmmakers like Noah Baumbach, and was known for her naturalistic, quirky performances. At the time, appearing in a Woody Allen film was still considered a badge of honor in certain circles, a sign that an actor had arrived in the art house world. For Gerwig, the role seemed like an opportunity to boost her visibility and credibility. But by 2018, the cultural climate had transformed. Dylan Farrow's allegations had once again dominated headlines, and the Austrian Me Too movement was forcing Hollywood to re-examine the choices of its stars and directors. For Gerwig, the question of her collaboration with Allen came up in interviews more and more, especially as she transitioned from actor to director with her critically acclaimed debut, Lady Bird.
Direct. That's always what I wanted to do, but I didn't go to film school, so I felt like I needed to gain experience, and I was lucky enough to work as an actor a lot, but I've co-written, I've produced, I've co-directed, I've held the boom, I've done costumes, I've done pretty much every job you can do on a film set. And when I finished this script, I thought...
Suddenly, her past work with Allen was viewed less as a career milestone and more as a stain. In a New York Times interview, Gerwig addressed the issue directly. She said that if she had known then what she knows now, she would not have worked with Allen. Her statement was clear: "I would not work with him today." She went further, saying she regretted her decision and acknowledged that her involvement had been hurtful to survivors of abuse. By speaking out, Gerwig joined a growing list of actors, including Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Hall, and Mira Sorvino, who had distanced themselves from Allen in public, sometimes accompanied by symbolic gestures like donating their salaries. What made Gerwig's statement especially impactful was her dual role as both an actor and an emerging female director. Her words carried symbolic weight beyond her own career. Here was a filmmaker who had just been nominated for an Oscar for Lady Bird, a film celebrated for its deeply human portrayal of women, openly reckoning with her past choices. She wasn't simply distancing herself from Allen, she was implicitly aligning herself with a new Hollywood ethos, one that placed integrity and accountability over tradition and prestige. The backlash, however, wasn't entirely one-sided. Some critics suggested that Gerwig's statement was opportunistic, designed to shield her from criticism at a crucial moment in her directing career.
Thought I could do it, but I think you don't quite know until you're on the other end of something like that you can do it completely. You sort of have to take the leap and...
Others pointed out that she had benefited from the exposure Allen's film gave her, and that her regret, while important, came years after the fact. Was her remorse too late, or was it an honest acknowledgement of how perspectives can change with time and new information? Still, Gerwig's honesty resonated with many fans. She didn't try to minimize her choice or make excuses. Instead, she admitted regret and acknowledged the harm it caused. In a culture that often rewards deflection, her straightforwardness stood out. Do you believe Greta Gerwig's regret was a sincere reflection of personal growth, or was it mainly a calculated move to protect her directing career during a crucial moment? Number 3. Mira Sorvino, open apology to Dylan Farrow. Few actors had more reason to look back on their Woody Allen collaboration with mixed emotions than Mira Sorvino. In 1995, Sorvino starred in Allen's comedy Mighty Aphrodite, playing a lovable yet quirky sex worker whose sharp wit and heart of gold charmed both audiences and critics. Her performance was widely celebrated, and in 1996, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. For Sorvino, working with Allen had seemed like a career breakthrough, a chance to prove her talent alongside a legendary director.
Sort of a quieter person in real life to actually have this license to just say whatever comes into your head and kind of impose yourself on people and jump on couches and, you know, like.
But decades later, the legacy of Mighty Aphrodite became complicated. As Dylan Farrow's allegations against Allen resurfaced with greater intensity during the Me Too era, Sorvino began rethinking her past choices. In 2018, she wrote a powerful open letter published in the Huffington Post, directly addressing Dylan Farrow. In the letter, she apologized for having worked with Allen at a time when the allegations had already been public knowledge, admitting that she had naively dismissed them. Sorvino confessed that she had believed Allen's denials and the industry's tendency to brush aside the accusations. But she wrote, "I now believe you," affirming her support for Farrow after years of silence. This apology was more than symbolic. Sorvino's words reflected a painful reckoning that she had once contributed to Allen's continued prominence in Hollywood despite the troubling allegations surrounding him. Her open letter struck many as one of the most heartfelt statements to emerge from the wave of actors disowning their Allen collaborations. Unlike a brief social media post or a quick press comment, Sorvino's message read like a confession and an effort to make amends.
Told her, fiance that she's from Maine. And my character's like, Maine? What are we up there like trapping moose or something? And she's just.
The reaction was significant. Farrow herself responded warmly, saying she appreciated Sorvino's courage and honesty. Many critics and fans praised Sorvino for directly acknowledging her past decisions rather than trying to minimize them. Others, however, questioned whether such an apology could truly undo the past. After all, Sorvino's Oscar win had been a direct result of the film she now regretted. Some argued that while her words were powerful, they came too late to erase the fact that her career had been elevated by Allen's work. For Sorvino, personally, the apology seemed liberating. She joined other actors, including Rebecca Hall and Timothée Chalamet, in donating salaries or making statements to distance themselves from Allen. But Sorvino's was unique in its depth and vulnerability.
Years ago, where both characters were naked the entire play. And it was really embarrassing. You felt like you were watching the Discovery Channel or something. You couldn't.
What kind of Discovery Channel are you getting?
She even expressed regret over not having been more critical earlier in her career, acknowledging that youthful ambition and industry pressure had clouded her judgment. Sorvino's open letter remains one of the most striking examples of Hollywood's reevaluation of Allen. It revealed not just her personal regret, but also the broader shift in how actors view accountability, a willingness to admit mistakes even decades later. Do you think Mira Sorvino's heartfelt apology was enough to redeem her decision to work with Woody Allen? Or do you believe some career choices can never be fully undone? Number 2. Rachel Brosnahan and Rebecca Hall, struggles and donations. By the late 2000s, the debate over Woody Allen's place in Hollywood had reached a boiling point. The allegations of abuse made by Dylan Farrow decades earlier were being re-examined with fresh urgency. And the Me Too movement was pushing actors to speak more candidly about their choices. For two stars, Rachel Brosnahan and Rebecca Hall, the reckoning with past work alongside Allen was deeply personal, and both found themselves in the difficult position of having to publicly confront regret. Rebecca Hall's situation was particularly striking.
Yeah, I just couldn't shake the feeling that there was something being hidden in my growing up. And honestly, it's a tremendous relief to just.
Known for her nuanced performances in films like The Prestige and Vicky Cristina Barcelona, itself an Allen-directed film, Hall was cast in A Rainy Day in New York in 2017. At the time, the project seemed like another chance to work with an acclaimed filmmaker, but as the cultural conversation shifted, Hall began to reconsider her role. In January 2018, she announced on Instagram that she was donating her entire salary from the film to Time's Up, the organization fighting workplace harassment.
Director-writer Amy Sherman-Palladino encouraged the whole cast to be there for the whole week, so we got to spend the entire last week of shooting just saying goodbye to this thing that's changed all of our lives and be there together, which we don't always get to do. There's a lot of us, and so it was.
She wrote candidly that after reading Dylan Farrow's statements, she realized working with Allen had been a mistake. After reading and rereading Dylan Farrow's statements, I see not only how complicated this matter is, but that my actions have made another woman feel silenced and dismissed. I regret this decision and wouldn't make the same one today. Hall's statement was direct, remorseful, and symbolic. It wasn't just about distancing herself from Allen. It was about acknowledging the impact her choices had on survivors. For an actress respected for her intelligence and integrity, her admission carried a particular weight. Yet, as with others, critics questioned whether the donation of a paycheck was enough. Did giving back money absolve the deeper complicity of lending one's talent to a filmmaker under such scrutiny? Rachel Brosnahan's reflection was more subtle but equally telling. By the time she addressed her work on Allen's short-lived Amazon series Crisis in 6 Scenes, Brosnahan had already skyrocketed to fame with The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. In a 2018 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, she admitted she had struggled with the decision to participate in Allen's project. While she described the experience of making the series as great at the time, she acknowledged that in hindsight, she would not make the same choice again. Brosnahan's honesty underscored the uncomfortable truth many actors face. Sometimes professional opportunities taken in the moment later become sources of regret. Together, Hall and Brosnahan represent two different but equally powerful ways actors grappled with their connections to Allen. Hall's highly visible donation was a dramatic gesture meant to send a message, while Brosnahan's quieter admission reflected a more personal struggle. Both, however, reinforced the same conclusion. Working with Woody Allen had become, in retrospect, a mistake. When an actor donates their pay or admits regret years later, do you think it truly redeems their choice? Or is it simply too little, too late? Number 1. Woody Allen versus the Bandwagon critics. Unlike many directors who lash out at specific rivals or stars, Woody Allen has long been careful not to name names. He has often repeated that he doesn't socialize much with actors and prefers to keep his distance.
You start to think when you're younger how important everything is and how things have to go right in your job, your career, your life, and your choices and all that. And then after a while, you start to realize that, I'm taking the big picture here, that eventually you die and eventually the sun burns out.
Yet, in recent years, as the industry shifted and performers began openly distancing themselves from him, Allen finally broke his usual reserve. Not to target one person in particular, but to call out the entire wave of critics he saw as opportunistic. In 2020, Allen gave a rare interview in which he addressed the actors who had pledged never to work with him again, or had donated their salaries from films like A Rainy Day in New York.
All the time. You constantly meet people, the unlikeliest people. It can be the cop on the beat, it can be the shoe salesman, and they're actors. And they, just before you leave, you say, wait 1 second, I just want to get something. And they give you their manila envelope, and it's got their picture in it and their resume.
His words were sharp. He called these performers self-serving and accused them of jumping on a trend rather than making decisions based on principle. He even compared the denunciations to a fad diet, saying it had become fashionable to denounce him, like everybody suddenly eating kale. The remark captured Allen's frustration with what he viewed as Hollywood hypocrisy. In his telling, these actors had happily accepted roles when it benefited their careers, only to distance themselves later when public opinion turned against him. He argued that many had no idea of the facts, but were simply protecting their own reputations. It was a rare moment of bluntness from Allen, who typically avoids confrontation. But it also underscored how isolated he had become. By brushing off his critics in such broad strokes, he essentially implied that their words carried little weight with him. Yet, the very act of responding suggested the backlash stung. For a filmmaker who once attracted ensembles of the most respected actors in the world, the shrinking pool of willing collaborators was impossible to ignore. The fallout was twofold. On the one hand, Allen's dismissive comments played to his supporters, who saw him as standing strong against a Hollywood mob mentality.
2 hours to dry off the room and reposition the wall and all that. You know, you could be there shooting a scene like that, you know, for 3 days before you get it. Now, we were lucky. Nothing went wrong. But there was a lot of anxiety before it happened, and we had...
On the other hand, for critics, his words reinforced the perception of a man unwilling to take responsibility, someone who dismissed serious accusations and the choices of others as mere fads.
One of the times that I thought, my God, this is really, you know, if you look at the thing, it's quite frightening.
Interestingly, not everyone turned against him. Scarlett Johansson, Javier Bardem, and Alan Alda publicly defended Allen, with Johansson saying she would work with him anytime. Their loyalty highlighted that Allen was not universally abandoned, even as many younger stars turned away. But his Kale quip showed just how deep his resentment had grown toward those who chose to sever ties. The irony is that Allen, by refusing to single out individuals, lumped all of his critics into the same category. Whether it was Colin Firth making a moral statement, Timothée Chalamet donating his salary, or Mira Sorvino writing a heartfelt apology to Dylan Farrow, Allen treated them all as part of a trend. In doing so, he may have further alienated those who might otherwise have remained neutral. For audiences, his words raised an important question. Was Allen defending his integrity, or simply lashing out at a Hollywood that had moved on without him? Do you think Woody Allen's Bandwagon critique shows strength in refusing to bow to pressure? Or does it reveal a man in denial about how much his legacy has changed? On the other side, Allen himself fought back in his own way, calling those same actors self-serving, dismissing them as jumping on a fashionable bandwagon. In his eyes, their decisions were less about morality and more about career preservation. His defenders, from Scarlett Johansson to Javier Bardem, echo that perspective, insisting Allen remains the victim of unfair judgment.
Out. So, you know, it just seemed like a big, meaningless thing. Now, you can't actually live your life like that, because if you do, you just sit there and why do anything? Why get up in the morning and do anything? So I think it's the job of the artist to try and figure out.
So, what's the truth? Was Allen a victim of Hollywood's shifting winds, or a filmmaker finally facing accountability after years of avoiding it? Was the wave of regret among actors sincere, or merely survival? These questions don't have easy answers, but they reveal the cracks in an industry that often hides its conflicts behind red carpets and press releases. Final question for you. Do you think Woody Allen's critics were acting out of genuine conscience? Or was it, as he suggested, simply the Hollywood bandwagon in action?